Alright guys, in this video I'll show you my preferred way of configuring a Topcon Hyper VR GPS receiver to connect to a network. So I'm in magnet field. I'll go into configure, I'll hit survey, and I have a lot of configurations here, but we will duplicate and actually create a brand new one. So we'll hit add over here and we'll create one called Hyper VR Tilt Network. So what this is just a name for the configuration. Obviously this can be whatever you want. It just needs to indicate something to you when you look at it and to choose the right configuration. I am doing network RTK, so that's what I'll select network RTK here because I'm connecting via a cell phone to a network provider. In the United States, the corrections are VRS. Elsewhere in the world they might be different, but in the United States VRS is what we want. I am going to use Ntrip as my protocol to connect. Next, I am definitely using a Topcon receiver. If you have a Sukiya receiver you can change it, but I'm using a Topcon receiver. And I'm not doing post-processing. Hit next. I am connecting to the Hyper VR through Bluetooth over here, so that's what we're talking about. Obviously, if you have a different receiver, you can pick it from here. Serial number I usually don't put in. Elevation mask I leave. 13 degrees is a default value. You can again mess with it, but that's what I typically leave. Hyper VR is the antenna type. That's correct. I'm using a 2-meter pole, which is a 6.56 foot value. If you don't know what this value is, you can always type in 2M. And then you hit this, and then you click into any other field, you see that it actually updates it. So anytime you type in an M at the end of your number value, and we're looking at US feet units, it'll convert it for you. So 6.56 is for the vertical height for the antenna type. Next, I am going to make the GPS connect to the RTN via the controller. I am using an FC6000 data collector, which has a broadband connection on it. And if you were identifying the receiver as the source for the internet corrections, then you'd have to have a cell phone in it. And again, in the United States, that is not an option. Elsewhere in the world, it might, but in the US, it's not an option. So we have to go with a controller connected, internal cellular. Luckily, you don't have to mess with these. So we'll hit next. Next, we have to add our IP address. I have a couple of them over here already, but this is how you actually enter it. So we'll do label, whatever you like. So I'll type in RTN network. Your IP address is whatever you are provided, so I'm just typing one in. And the trick here is you have to put in your port too. So it's not a separate field, but you have to put the port. And if you have this pull-up keyboard, this pop-up keyboard, you might be looking for that colon. And if you need to look for colon, you have to hit the little shift button. And under shift, you'll see a colon here. So we'll type in 2101. Hit OK, and of course your username is whatever it is provided by your network administrator. There we go. Hit OK. Now make sure before you leave this screen that you're actually seeing and have the little green check next to the ones that you actually care about that you're connecting. So we'll hit next. Automatic rover position is on. That will provide the network with the position of your GPS when it's asking what base station is nearest to you. So unless if you uncheck this, then you can type in your own latitude, longitude, but that's 99.999% of the time not what you want. So automatic rover position is correct. Next, because I have a tilt enabled GPS receiver, I usually like to view my level and I like to do a correction. If you don't like to use tilt, obviously you can uncheck it, but I have it, so I'll leave it on. The auto store function I don't typically use, but it is there for a reason. All right, next, For topo surveying, I like to set my solution to fixed only and a quick solution to fixed only. Obviously, also 1 reading here and 3 readings here. Again, these are highly end user driven, so whatever you actually like. So we'll hit next. I like to do my auto topo at 25-foot intervals, horizontal distance, unless you want it to be by time or slope or elevation. So this is again a highly end user driven selection. For stakeout, I like to do 0.1 on my horizontal and 0.15 on my vertical. I know it's a little loose, but at least I know I'm really far out if that's the case, that when I'm storing a position. I also like, and this is very, again, preferential based on what you're used to, but I like to do a point and bearing for my stakeout. What this lets you do is you are allowed to put in a point. Let's say you have a reference point that's a tall tower on your job site. You can use it as your in, out, left, right a reference or orientation. Or if you do moving direction, obviously that's the default. But I like to do point and bearing. I don't need to include my previously staked design points because I already do them once. Next, same dialog here for your stakeout settings. I'm not changing these. The markings on the stakes, I never really adjust these screens, so this is okay. Your icon for your stake positions, your choice. I also like to store my points once I stake them with the _SDK. If you don't like it because your software doesn't allow alphanumeric characters in the point numbers, then you might want to use design points constant. This is a useful way of always saving all of your stake positions in the, let's say, your 10,000 point range or a 100,000 point range. So your choice. But again, I usually just do design point suffix. All right, next. This is a Hyper-VR, so it can track GLONASS, it can track BeiDou satellites, and it can track Galileo. So I have these on. Use all signals typically slows down your acquisition, so I don't use this. I also could use the differential S-pass, but because this is an RTK system, I choose not to. We'll never see the QZSS satellites, and nav IC is also not something that I typically have on. Advanced settings under the RTK position. If you want to have faster updating position, then make it say extrapolate. If you want it a little bit more accurate but slower, once a second, matched epic is a valid way of calculating your RTK position. Multipath reduction is typically on. High vibrate environment I don't have on. I never mess with the base station make. This was never an option or a problem that I ever encountered. So we'll hit next. And over here, this might be something that some of you might like. Display coordinates after measurement. If you want to see every time you take a measurement, you get an option to actually change your code and verify what you did. But if you want to go for speed, you don't have this check. That way, every time you take a measurement, it'll just increment to the next point number and not give you the confirmation screen. But essentially, now you're saved. Now you have a Hyper-VR tilt network option, meaning if you go into your connect screen now you have this Hyper-VR tilt network option, and when you hit connect, it should connect to your VR device, prompt you for it if it hasn't been seen before as far as the Bluetooth, and allow you to actually connect to the network. All right, I hope this is a useful video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below.